Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the mental health and personality factors that may be at work in the case of Isabella Guzman. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So first I'll cover the background, then I'll move to the timeline of the crime, then I'll take a look at the mental health and personality factors. Starting with the background, Isabella Guzman was born on June 9, 1995. She lived with her mother, Yoon-Mi Guzman, and stepfather, Ryan Hoy, in Aurora, Colorado. Guzman's mother and stepfather had been together for about 13 years. Before this, her mother was married to Robert Guzman, Isabella's biological father. After they divorced, Isabella lived with her mother for a few years, but her behavior became difficult to control, so her mother sent her to live with her father for a while. By the time we reach August of 2013, Isabella was again residing with her mother, and the relationship was contentious. On August 27, 2013, Isabella Guzman yelled at her mother and spit in her face. On the morning of August 28, 2013, Yoon-Mi showed Ryan Hoy an email sent from Isabella stating, "You will pay." In response, the mother called the police. They arrived at the family home and informed Isabella that her mother had the power to throw her out of the house. This appeared to calm Isabella down. The police believed that the situation was resolved. Isabella's biological father had a conversation with her that same day in which he explained that she should be obedient to her parents. He believed he made progress with Isabella. Isabella's mother went to work. She returned to the house at 9:30 p.m. At 10:05 p.m., Ryan Hoy called the police and told them that his wife and Isabella were inside the bathroom, and he could see blood coming from under the bathroom door. Apparently, he heard a thump and his wife calling for him, and he made his way to the bathroom. He was unable to get in the door because Isabella was pushing against it. She locked it a few moments later. While he was still on the phone with the authorities, Isabella opened the door. She was holding a knife and staring straight ahead. She walked by her stepfather and didn't say a word. Hoy observed that his wife had been stabbed and was unresponsive. At 10:16 p.m., the police arrived. Hoy told the officers that Isabella had fled the residence and still had the knife. The police noticed that he was covered in blood and found a baseball bat next to Isabella's mother. Initially, the police believed that the mother had been stabbed 79 times. Later, it was determined she was stabbed 151 times. Isabella Guzman was arrested the next day in a nearby parking garage and charged with first-degree murder. In June of 2014, she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Interestingly, the prosecutors said there was clear evidence she was mentally ill, and they supported the plea. Prosecutors often admit that some defendants are mentally ill, but they usually try to make it seem like a personality disorder or something that doesn't involve psychosis. It's unusual for a prosecutor to actually agree with an insanity defense. A mental health professional testified saying that Isabella had schizophrenia. He said that she suffered from delusions for years and suggested that there were obvious signs of schizophrenia, including she was staring into space, having conversations with people who were not present, and laughing for no reason. Isabella believed her mother was a woman named Cecilia who needed to be killed in order to save the world. The judge accepted the plea, saying that Isabella did not know the difference between right and wrong. Isabella will remain in a mental hospital until such time as she is no longer a threat to herself or others. So this could be for a few years or for the rest of her life. Now, as far as mental health and personality factors, there's not a lot of information available about this case. We know that Isabella was diagnosed with schizophrenia and that she had both hallucinations and delusions. And we know at least some of the delusions were of the paranoid type. Inferences have been made about her personality based on her behavior in court. She was staring and smiling at the camera, which of course seems odd under the circumstances, but that behavior could be explained by schizophrenia. It doesn't necessarily indicate anything about her personality. Similarly, based on the fact that one of her court appearances was delayed because she refused to leave her cell, some have suggested this demonstrates she was stubborn, antagonistic, and combative. This could also be explained by the schizophrenia. As a side note, I do find it interesting that court was actually delayed because of her decision not to leave her cell. I guess this was a reminder to inmates about the little-known "your jail cell is your castle" policy. This whole time they thought they had to follow the rules in jail. Who would have known they could just say, "No, I'm staying in my jail cell," and nobody could do anything about it. This policy probably should have been abandoned at the same time that other controversial policies were changed. For example, the tunnel construction team building exercise, the concealed shank permit program, and the lockpicking class. Now, some people were alarmed that Isabella's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity was accepted. Is it possible that schizophrenia could really explain behavior like this? Let's take a look at what the research literature says about matricide. So matricide is when a child kills their mother. Of course, matricide can be perpetrated by either a son or a daughter. It is considered a specific type of parricide. Parricide technically means killing a relative, but it's almost always used to mean killing a parent. Matricide is rare. There are only about 100 cases a year in the United States. Only 16% of those involve a daughter as the perpetrator. Less than 20% of daughters who commit matricide are under the age of 18. Isabella had turned 18 about 2 months before the killing. There's quite a bit of difference in the typical profiles of male and female matricidal offenders. Daughters who kill their mothers are often middle-aged, single, and live with their mother. Isabella was far from middle age, but she was single and lived with her mother. The daughter is often dependent on the mother, and the relationship is hostile. Both of these conditions seem present in this case. The use of force is often excessive. I think 151 stab wounds would qualify as excessive, although I have read about cases where there were even more wounds. 75% of the time, daughters who kill their mothers suffer from a mental disorder associated with psychosis. For example, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, major mood disorders like major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder, and something like delusional disorder. When daughters commit parricide, over 80% of the time the mother is the victim. The result is matricide as opposed to patricide, killing of the father. In looking at the research, we see that many of the characteristics typically observed with matricide are present in this case, so this decision to accept the plea should not be surprising. What I find interesting about this particular case is how seemingly smooth the process was. The defense, the prosecutor, and the judge all agreed that not only did Isabella have schizophrenia, but she was not criminally responsible. I've seen many cases where clearly the defendant had schizophrenia and they were still tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. The intersection of mental health and the law is a dangerous place. Sometimes there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason why one perpetrator is sentenced to prison and another is sent to a mental hospital. In the end, even though it's disconcerting that the process isn't scientific or precise, the result is usually the same. Even when killers are found not criminally responsible, they often spend the rest of their lives in a mental hospital, which as far as living conditions is no better than prison. Actually, in many cases, a mental hospital is much worse. I think the lesson that can be learned from this case is how difficult it is to predict female-perpetrated matricide. The police visited the home the day of the killing. They thought everything was fine. The biological father talked to Isabella that same day. He thought the situation was under control. There are only two things I can think of that may have reduced the risk. First, denying Isabella access to any weapons, although she could have always used ordinary objects as weapons or found a weapon outside the home. Second, never allowing oneself to be in a vulnerable position, like installing deadbolts on all the interior doors and never turning one's back on a potential perpetrator. This seems like a stressful way to live, and it's really not practical for most people. So to sum things up, this is a tragic case featuring a very rare type of murder that is almost impossible to defend against. Those are my thoughts on Isabella Guzman. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.